In this video, I'm going to talk about the differences and trade-offs between recording to a USB drive from the ATEM Mini directly or using an external recorder like a Video Assist. And I'm going to show you some real-world examples of the differences in the quality you get between the two different methods. I first want to talk a little bit about the differences between all the different ATEM Mini models. There are currently 5 different ATEM Mini models, so it can be a little bit confusing. All but the very cheapest base model include the ability to record to USB drives. The cheapest ATEM Mini does not have the recording feature, and it also does not have multi-view. Once you get to the Pro and Extreme, as well as the Pro ISO and Extreme ISO, those both can record. The differences between the two are the ISO models have the ability to record all of the inputs at the same time. So again, no recording in the base. The Pro can record the one main mix called the program. The ISO models can record the program plus all of the either 4 or 8 inputs at the same time. So how does the recording feature on the ATEM Mini work? It turns out the recording and streaming features are actually sort of connected together. Whatever quality you've chosen to stream at is the same that will be recorded. That means the recording is a compressed H.264 file. If you are streaming at the streaming high setting, that'll give you a 6 or 9 megabit per second recording approximately. Keep in mind, it is a variable bitrate recorder, which means if you have a lot of motion on the screen or a lot of complicated images, it'll use more data to encode that. Or if you have just a flat color or simple shapes like slides, it'll use less data. That file is compressed using H.264, which is the typical streaming and compression used on the web. That is very different from a codec like ProRes, which is a much higher quality and less compressed codec. But we'll get to those differences in a little bit. The nice thing about the recording feature built into the ATEM Mini is that all you do is you plug in a USB drive and it records directly to that drive. The 2 ISO models will give you a whole bunch of files. You'll have a file for each of the cameras, as well as the program recording and all your individual audio tracks. The Pro and the first Extreme do not do any of the ISO features. You just get the one file that's recorded, which is the same thing that is being streamed. The recording can be used separately from streaming, so you can either record and not stream, or you can stream and not record, or do both at the same time. So what about using an external recorder with the ATEM Mini? This isn't really anything special to the ATEM Mini. This is the case with any HDMI switcher that you're using. Essentially, you take an HDMI output from the switcher and connect it to a separate dedicated recorder like the Blackmagic Video Assist or any of the ATEM devices. That means the HDMI out of the ATEM Mini has to be set to the program out. So on the 4-input ones, there's only one HDMI out port. And if that's your program out, you don't have any way to look at the multi-view of that switcher. However, this is different with the Extreme, because the Extreme models have 2 HDMI outputs. That means you could use one of the HDMI outputs to look at the multi-view and the other one fed into a recorder. Okay, so why would you want to use an external recorder at all? The main reason to use an external recorder is that you'll be able to record a much higher quality video compared to the built-in recording that goes to a USB drive. However, just because it's better doesn't actually necessarily mean you want to do it. The higher quality recording into a codec like ProRes will give you a much better quality file, and it will be a lot bigger in size. That difference in quality, though, is really only relevant if you're going to be doing a lot of editing later, in particular color grading. The main reason to go with an external recorder in ProRes or another high quality codec like that is if you actually need that extra data in order to be able to adjust more of it later. The files will be significantly larger than the H.264 compressed files you get on the ATEM Mini itself. So why would you use the built-in recorder? Well, using the built-in recorder isn't necessarily bad. It uses the same encoder that it uses when it's streaming to YouTube, which means if you're streaming to YouTube and you want to record a local copy of whatever you're streaming, then that's totally fine because the exact thing that goes to YouTube is what's going to be on the disk. The ISO models are special because they do record not only the main program out, but also each of the individual feeds at the same time. And this honestly is one of my favorite features of these devices because it is by far the cheapest way to record 4 or 8 video feeds at the same time. Nothing else comes even close in terms of price point. And that's actually how I record these videos. Right now, I'm recording several different camera angles on the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO and editing it later. The one exception to my videos is when I do B-roll, I usually film those on a camera and add those in later. But I just like to, without really thinking about it, record all these angles, including computer screens or overhead cameras or whatever it is, and they're all in sync, and I don't have to worry about popping in 8 different SD cards into all these different devices. Also, on the smaller ones, it means you can use that HDMI out for multi-view, which is very helpful. So I want to give you an idea of what it actually looks like when we're talking about what kind of quality difference you get. What I'm first going to do is give you an extreme example of the differences. So what you're about to see is not at all representative of what you're going to see in real life recordings. So the compression artifacts you're about to see are going to be bad, but think of it as like looking at a hair in a microscope and then complaining that the hair is too jagged. So this is a very poorly lit scene intentionally to give you an idea of what's going to go wrong. First, this is the video recorded in the external recorder in ProRes. I'm going to now take this into my editor and boost the contrast and brightness to see what happens. Again, this is a terrible example because don't ever shoot a video this dark, but this will point out the differences in the compression. Now, here's the same scene recorded in the ATEM Mini. I'm now going to do the same thing. I'm going to go boost the contrast and the brightness, and now you can really see the compression artifacts coming through. So again, this isn't super realistic because you would never brighten up an image that's this dark, but if you do plan on adjusting colors or brightness later when you're editing, you can see how much the recording in the ATEM is losing all that information, and you will get a better result with an external recorder. So that's just a quick demo to give you an idea of the quality differences, but again, it comes more down to workflow. Personally, I think it's perfectly acceptable to use the built-in recorder in the ATEM Mini. All of the videos I've done this year so far have been recorded in the ATEM Mini itself using the ISO record feature. I also still think the $300 extra for the ISO model of either the Pro or the Extreme is absolutely worth it. It is, again, the cheapest way to get a 4 or 8 channel recorder. I've really enjoyed using it for doing these kind of videos on my channel, as well as for other jobs I've recorded that I needed to be able to edit later. Well, I hope this video has been useful. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.